It was one of those rare Saturday mornings when everything seemed just right. The sunlight filtered through the curtains, casting a warm glow on our bedroom. I turned over, expecting to find Jenna beside me, but instead, her side of the bed was empty and cold. I heard faint sounds coming from the kitchen. Jenna was already up, probably making her green smoothie, the same one she drank religiously after her morning workouts. I smiled, thinking how lucky I was. Jenna and I had been married for 8 years, and despite the ups and downs, I believed we had built something strong. She was a fitness enthusiast, always at the gym, pushing herself to stay in shape, and I admired that about her. Her dedication to health was one of the many things that attracted me to her when we first met. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, at least I thought so. As I got out of bed and made my way to the kitchen, I couldn't help but notice how quiet the house was. Jenna usually had some upbeat music playing during her morning routine, but today, it was just the sound of the blender and her occasional hum. I walked in and found her focused on the smoothie, her long, dark hair tied up in a messy bun, her toned arms moving with practiced ease. "Morning, beautiful," I said, wrapping my arms around her from behind. She turned her head slightly and gave me a quick smile before returning to her task. "Morning, Mike. Sleep well?" "Yeah, like a rock," I replied, though I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. "What about you? How was the gym?" Jenna hesitated for a moment before answering. "It was fine. Just did some cardio and weights." Her response seemed casual enough, but I couldn't help noticing the slight tension in her voice. Jenna was usually more animated when talking about her workouts, always eager to share how much she'd lifted or how many miles she'd run. Today, she seemed distracted, almost distant. I didn't press the issue. Everyone has their off days, right? But the unease lingered. As the morning went on, I tried to shake off the feeling. We had plans to spend the day together. Jenna suggested we go hiking at a nearby trail we loved. It was one of our favorite activities, a chance to reconnect with nature and with each other. But as we hiked, I noticed Jenna was quieter than usual, lost in her thoughts. "Are you okay?" I asked at one point, stopping to look at her. She nodded, a little too quickly. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just thinking about work and stuff." Her response didn't convince me, but I let it go. The rest of the hike passed in a blur of forced conversation and awkward silences. By the time we got home, I was more concerned than ever. Later that evening, as Jenna was taking a shower, I found myself drawn to her phone, which was lying on the kitchen counter. I wasn't the type to snoop. Trust was the foundation of our relationship, but something in the back of my mind urged me to look. I picked up the phone and hesitated. Was I really going to do this? What was I even looking for? Before I could second-guess myself, the phone buzzed with a notification, a message from someone named. My heart pounded as I opened the message. It was short and cryptic. "Everything's set for Monday. You're going to be amazing." There was nothing overtly suspicious about it, but it felt wrong, out of place. Who was M? And what was happening on Monday? I quickly put the phone down as I heard the shower turn off. My mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. When Jenna came out, she was wrapped in a towel, her skin glistening from the steam. She smiled at me, but it didn't reach her eyes. I tried to act normal, but my thoughts were in turmoil. Something was definitely going on, and I needed to find out what. That night, as Jenna slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The message replayed in my mind over and over. The next day, I made a decision. I would go to the gym she claimed to frequent and check things out for myself. If everything was normal, I would drop it and move on, but if it wasn't, well, I didn't want to think about that yet. Monday morning came faster than I expected. Jenna left early, as usual, giving me a kiss on the cheek before heading out. I waited until she was gone before getting dressed and heading to the gym. When I arrived, I walked up to the front desk and asked if Jenna had checked in. The receptionist, a young woman with a friendly smile, glanced at her computer screen. "I'm sorry, what was the name again?" she asked. "Jenna Thompson," I repeated, my heart pounding in my chest. She typed something into the computer, and then frowned. I'm sorry, but there's no record of a Jenna Thompson checking in today. In fact, she hasn't been here in over a week. I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. Are you sure? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, I'm sure, she replied, her smile faltering as she noticed the look on my face. I thanked her and left the gym, my mind spinning. If Jenna wasn't going to the gym, where was she going every morning? What was she really doing? As I drove home, a dark thought began to take root in my mind. I had no proof, just a gnawing suspicion, but I couldn't shake it. Something was very wrong, and I was determined to find out what. The rest of the day passed in a blur. I couldn't concentrate at work, my thoughts consumed by Jenna and the questions that plagued me. By the time I got home, I was a nervous wreck. Jenna greeted me with a kiss, but I barely responded, my mind too preoccupied to engage in small talk. That night, I made another decision, one I never thought I would make. I would go through Jenna's computer. It was the only way to find out what was really going on. As she slept, I waited until the early hours of the morning, when I was sure she was in a deep sleep, and then I quietly slipped out of bed and headed to the living room. Her laptop was on the coffee table, and with trembling hands I opened it and entered the password. I navigated to her files, my heart racing as I searched for anything that could explain her strange behavior. And that's when I found it. A video file, simply titled, Special Project. My stomach churned as I clicked on it. The screen flickered to life, and what I saw made my blood run cold. There was Jenna, my wife, the woman I loved and trusted, on a bed in a room I didn't recognize. And she wasn't alone. There were several men, big, muscular, and all of them black. My mind couldn't process what I was seeing. This wasn't real. It couldn't be. But it was. As the video played on, I felt like I was being torn apart from the inside. The woman in the video was unrecognizable to me, a stranger wearing my wife's face. The things she was doing, the way she was acting, it was like a nightmare come to life. I watched in horror as the men took turns with her, and she seemed to enjoy it. My stomach turned, and I felt like I was going to be sick. This wasn't just infidelity, this was something far worse. When the video finally ended, I just sat there, staring at the screen, unable to move, unable to think. The woman I had married, the woman I thought I knew, had been hiding something so dark, so twisted, that I didn't know if I could ever look at her the same way again. And the worst part? The file was dated a week ago, right around the time she had stopped going to the gym. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. What was I supposed to do now? How could I confront her about this? The betrayal was so deep, so complete, that I felt like my entire world had been shattered. But one thing was clear, I needed to confront Jenna. And soon. The house was still. The darkness outside seemed to press in on me as I sat in the living room, Jenna's laptop closed, but the weight of what I had just seen still suffocating me. My hands shook, my breathing was ragged, and my mind felt like it was spiraling out of control. I couldn't think straight. I couldn't believe what I had just witnessed. The woman I had built a life with was living a lie, and I had been so blind. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight, my pulse thundering in my ears. How could she do this? How could she betray me like this? Rage surged through me, burning hot, but it quickly gave way to a deep, gut-wrenching sorrow. I thought we had something real, something strong. I thought she loved me. Now, I wasn't so sure. I glanced down the hallway toward our bedroom. Jenna was in there, sleeping peacefully, unaware that her secret was no longer a secret. I felt a sudden, overwhelming urge to wake her up, to shake her, to demand answers. But I stayed rooted to the couch, paralyzed by the enormity of what I had just uncovered. My mind raced, alternating between flashes of disbelief and waves of nausea. How long had she been doing this? Was this the first time, or had it been going on for months, maybe even years? And why? Why would she do something like this when we had a life together? A good life, I thought. Tears blurred my vision, but I angrily wiped them away. I wasn't going to break down, not yet. I needed to stay focused, to figure out what the hell I was going to do next. But the pain was unbearable, twisting like a knife in my chest. It felt like my heart had been ripped out and trampled on. I had to confront her. There was no avoiding it. But I had to be smart, had to keep my emotions in check, no matter how much I wanted to scream and throw things. Inhaling deeply, I tried to steady myself. My hands were still shaking, but I managed to get up from the couch and slowly, quietly, make my way toward the bedroom. My heart pounded harder with every step, my breath coming in shallow bursts. I could hear Jenna's soft breathing as I approached the door. I stood there for a moment, watching her in the dim light. She looked so peaceful, so innocent, and for a brief, sickening second, I wanted to believe that what I had seen was a nightmare, that none of it was real. But the truth was staring me in the face, undeniable and monstrous. The anger was back, hot and fierce, bubbling up from the pit of my stomach. How could she do this to me? To us? My fists clenched at my sides as I stood there, torn between waking her up and walking away. But I wasn't going to walk away, not until I had answers. I stepped closer, my heart thudding in my chest, and reached out to shake her awake. "Jenna," I whispered, my voice tight and trembling with barely controlled rage. "Wake up." She stirred, groaning softly before blinking up at me, confusion flickering across her face. "Mike? What's wrong?" Her voice was groggy, thick with sleep, as she sat up slightly, rubbing her eyes. I swallowed hard, trying to control the flood of emotions surging through me: anger, pain, betrayal. "We need to talk," I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but the intensity in my tone must have caught her attention. Her eyes widened slightly, and she sat up fully, her brows furrowing. "What's going on?" she asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into her voice. I hesitated for a second, unsure how to even start, but then the rage took over. I couldn't hold back any longer. "What the hell is this, Jenna?" I spat, my voice rising as I threw her laptop onto the bed in front of her, the video still queued up on the screen. Her face drained of color instantly. She froze, her eyes locked on the laptop, her breath catching in her throat. For a split second, she didn't move or say anything, just stared at the screen as if it might disappear if she looked long enough. But it didn't. "Mike, I can explain, she started, her voice shaking now, but I cut her off, my voice raw with betrayal. "Explain what, Jenna? Explain why there's a video of you with a bunch of men doing that." The words felt vile on my tongue, and saying them out loud made the reality of the situation hit even harder. I could barely keep myself together. I felt like I was unraveling, my life falling apart right in front of me. Jenna's eyes filled with panic, her hands trembling as she pulled the covers tighter around her. "Please, just let me explain. It's not what you think," she pleaded, but I couldn't listen. I couldn't stand to hear her excuses. "Not what I think," I yelled, my voice cracking with the sheer intensity of my emotions. "I watched it, Jenna. I watched the whole damn thing. You lied to me. Every time you told me you were going to the gym, you were doing this behind my back. Why? Why would you do this to me?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her expression that looked like genuine remorse, but it only made me angrier. Where was that remorse when she was sneaking around, making her special projects? Where was it when she was lying to my face? "I needed the money, Mike," she finally said, her voice cracking, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We were struggling, and I couldn't live like that anymore. I wanted more." Her words felt like a slap to the face. I took a step back, shaking my head in disbelief. "Struggling? We weren't struggling, Jenna. We were fine. We had a life, a good life. How could you think this was the answer?" Her sobs grew louder, her body shaking as she tried to explain. "I just wanted something for myself. I didn't want to be stuck in the same routine, in the same boring life. And they offered me so much money, $150,000 for one video, Mike. One video! It was easy." Her words hung in the air like a weight, crushing the last shred of hope I had. She wasn't sorry for what she did, she was sorry she got caught. I could feel my heart breaking all over again, the pieces crumbling into dust as I realized just how little I meant to her. She wasn't doing this for us. She was doing it for herself, and she didn't care who she hurt along the way. You didn't even think about me, did you? I whispered, my voice hoarse, the tears finally spilling over. You didn't care how this would destroy me, destroy us. She didn't answer. She just sat there, her face buried in her hands, sobbing uncontrollably. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to make her feel the same pain I was feeling, but I couldn't. All I could do was stand there, my heart shattering into a million pieces. I don't even know who you are anymore, I said, my voice barely audible as I turned and walked out of the room. The hallway felt longer than usual as I stumbled back toward the living room, the weight of everything pressing down on me. I collapsed onto the couch, burying my face in my hands, the tears finally flowing freely. I had lost her. Not just my wife, but the life we had built together. It was all gone, shattered beyond repair, and I didn't know how to pick up the pieces. All I knew was that the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted with my heart, was a stranger now. And the betrayal was more than I could bear. I don't know how long I sat there on the couch, lost in the crushing weight of betrayal. The house was silent except for the muffled sounds of Jenna's sobs coming from the bedroom. But as the minutes ticked by, the crying stopped. The stillness grew thicker, almost suffocating, and with it, a simmering anger began to replace my heartbreak. Why was I the one falling apart when she was the one who destroyed everything? I wiped the tears from my face, anger surging through me like a storm. I wasn't going to let her get away with this. She had to face what she'd done. I pushed myself off the couch, my movements stiff and mechanical, and marched back down the hallway. The bedroom door was slightly ajar, and I could see Jenna sitting on the edge of the bed, her back to me. The pathetic image of her crying and apologizing just moments ago now filled me with disgust. I wasn't going to let her off that easily. She didn't deserve my pity. Jenna, I said, my voice hard as steel as I walked into the room. She didn't turn around immediately. When she finally did, the tear-streaked face I expected to see was gone, replaced by a cold, calculating expression. Her eyes were dry, her jaw set, and there was something new in her gaze, something I hadn't seen before. She wasn't sorry at all. What do you want now, Mike? She said, her voice icy, as if I were the one inconveniencing her. My breath caught in my throat. What do I want? I repeated, disbelief and anger mixing in a volatile cocktail. I want to understand how the woman I married could become this. Jenna rolled her eyes, a sneer curling her lips. Oh, please spare me the victim routine, Mike. You always act like you're so perfect, like our life was some fairy tale. Newsflash, it wasn't. It was boring. You were boring. Her words hit me like a slap in the face. My fist clenched at my sides, trying to keep the fury from boiling over. Boring? That's what this is about. Because I didn't keep you entertained, you thought it was okay to do that? My voice trembled with rage. She shrugged, completely unfazed. I needed more, Mike. I needed something exciting, something that made me feel alive. And you? You weren't cutting it anymore. I mean, look at you. She gestured dismissively in my direction. You're just average. Ordinary. And I'm not about to spend the rest of my life stuck with ordinary. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. The woman standing before me, this cold, heartless stranger, was my wife? How had I been so blind? My vision blurred with anger as I tried to process the magnitude of her betrayal. So, what was the plan, Jenna? Keep making these videos behind my back? Keep lying to me, until when? Until I finally caught on? She stood up, brushing past me as if I were nothing more than an obstacle in her way. Why not? She said with a cruel smile. It's not like you were paying attention anyway. Besides, it's not like I needed your approval. I've been taking care of myself just fine. The way she said it, the utter lack of remorse, the twisted pride in her voice made my blood boil. Taking care of yourself? I spat. By sleeping with strangers for money? Jenna turned to face me, her eyes narrowing. Yes, Mike. Strangers who paid me more for one night than you've ever been able to give me. Do you even know what that's like? To finally feel wanted? Desired? The raw bitterness in her tone took me by surprise. I had known there was something wrong in our marriage, but this was a whole different level of resentment. And yet, despite her venomous words, it was the truth behind them that hurt the most. I wanted to scream, to shout, to shake her until she realized the damage she'd done. But instead, I forced myself to stay calm. You know what, Jenna? I said, my voice cold. If that's how you feel, if money and attention are all that matter to you, then we're done. You can have your exciting, disgusting life without me. For a moment, her eyes flashed with something that looked like fear, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by a mocking smile. Fine, she said. But don't think for a second that you're going to ruin what I've built. I don't need you. I never did. That was it. The final blow. The woman I had loved, who I had shared my life with, was gone. In her place was someone I didn't recognize, someone who had no problem tearing me apart to get what she wanted. But then, just as I was about to turn and leave, something unexpected happened, something that threw both of us completely off guard. There was a knock at the door. We both froze, the sudden intrusion shattering the tension between us. Who could be here at this hour? I looked at Jenna, who seemed just as surprised as I was. I'm not expecting anyone, she said, her voice faltering for the first time since this nightmare began. I walked out of the bedroom, my mind racing. Had someone seen the video? Was this some kind of twisted joke? My thoughts spiraled as I reached the front door. Taking a deep breath, I opened it cautiously. Standing on the porch was a man I didn't recognize. He was tall, well-built, and had an air of confidence that instantly put me on edge. But what struck me the most was the envelope in his hand, which he held out to me with a smirk. Mike Thompson? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Yes? I replied, my voice wary. Sign here, the man said, handing me a pen. Delivery for your wife. I stared at him for a moment, trying to make sense of what was happening. A delivery? At this hour? The man didn't respond, just waited for me to sign. Reluctantly, I did, and he handed me the envelope before turning on his heel and walking away, disappearing into the night. I closed the door, staring at the envelope in my hand. It was plain, unmarked except for Jenna's name. My heart pounded as I walked back to the bedroom, where Jenna was now pacing nervously. What is it? She asked, her voice edged with anxiety as she saw the envelope. I don't know, I replied, holding it out to her. But it's for you. She hesitated, eyeing the envelope like it might explode. Then, with a sudden burst of determination, she snatched it out of my hand and tore it open. As she pulled out the contents, her face went pale. It was a single sheet of paper, but whatever was written on it clearly shook her to the core. What is it? I demanded, unable to hide the urgency in my voice. But Jenna didn't answer. Her hands trembled as she stared at the paper, her eyes wide with shock. And then, to my utter disbelief, she laughed, a cold, bitter laugh that sent chills down my spine. It looks like you're not the only one who's been keeping secrets, she said, her voice laced with a twisted kind of amusement. What the hell are you talking about? I asked, growing more agitated by the second. She handed me the paper, her smile widening as she watched my reaction. Go ahead, Mike. Read it. You might find it enlightening. I snatched the paper from her and scanned the text, my heart racing as the words sank in. It was a contract, an official document outlining the terms of a deal Jenna had made. And the amount? $150,000. But there was something else, something that made my blood run cold. The contract wasn't just for one video. It was for a series. And the clause at the bottom, the one that guaranteed Jenna's safety and anonymity, had been voided. Whoever she'd been working with had sold her out, and now she was exposed. They're going to release everything, Jenna said, her voice suddenly flat, as if the realization had finally sunk in. All the videos, all the details. And there's nothing I can do to stop it. I stared at the paper, my mind reeling. This wasn't just about infidelity anymore. This was about something much bigger, something that could destroy both of us. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I realized that Jenna wasn't the only one who was screwed. If those videos got out, if people found out, our lives were about to implode in a way either of us could have ever imagined. I stood there, the contract shaking in my hand, every word searing into my brain like a brand. Jenna had dug her own grave, and now she was staring into the abyss she had created. But as the initial shock wore off, something else started bubbling up inside me, something dark and bitter. I wasn't just going to let her drag me down with her. No, if she thought she could screw me over and get away with it, she was dead wrong. I slowly looked up from the paper, fixing Jenna with a stare that must have chilled her to the bone, because for the first time since this nightmare began, she looked genuinely scared. Her smug expression faltered, but it was too late. The damage was done, and she was about to learn just how badly she had underestimated me. "Looks like you've really outdone yourself this time, Jenna," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm as I tossed the contract back at her. "Congratulations. You've managed to completely screw up both our lives. But here's the thing." I took a step closer, my voice dropping to a menacing whisper. "I'm done with you. You got yourself into this mess, and now you're going to get yourself out of it. Alone." The color drained from her face as she realized what I was saying. What do you mean?" she stammered, her voice shaky. "You can't just leave me, Oh, but I can." I cut her off, my tone venomous. "You've made it perfectly clear that you don't need me. Hell, you never did, right? You've been taking care of yourself just fine, haven't you? So go ahead, Jenna. Keep doing what you're so damn good at, lying, cheating, and making videos. But don't expect me to stick around and clean up your mess. You're on your own." Her eyes widened, and I could see the panic setting in. "Mike, wait," she pleaded, her voice frantic now. "You can't just walk away. We can figure this out, okay? We can fix this, I echoed, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "There's no fixing this, Jenna. You made your choices, and now you're going to live with the consequences. Besides, why would I help you? You've made it crystal clear how little I matter to you. You're better off without me, right? So deal with your problems on your own." She snapped back, her desperation quickly morphing into anger. "You're such a coward, Mike. You're just going to walk away like you're the victim here? You think you're so perfect, so righteous, but you're just as pathetic as I always knew you were." The venom in her voice stung, but I didn't flinch. If anything, her words only fueled my resolve. "Call me whatever you want, Jenna," I said coldly. "It doesn't change the fact that you're the one who destroyed everything. You're the one who chose money and excitement over our marriage, over me. So don't expect me to stick around and hold your hand while your world crumbles. I've got better things to do with my life. You think you're so high and mighty." She spat, her eyes blazing with fury. "But you're nothing without me. You'll be alone, miserable, and you'll regret this. I guarantee it, maybe," I said, shrugging off her words as if they were nothing. "But at least I'll have my dignity. You'll just be a memory, a bad one. And I won't waste another second of my life on someone who's as selfish and cruel as you." Jenna's face twisted with rage, her fists clenching at her sides. "You're not getting off that easy, Mike. You think you can just walk out and leave me to deal with this on my own? Fine. But don't think for a second that you'll come out of this unscathed. You'll be just as ruined as I am." Her words were meant to cut deep, but they barely scratched the surface. I was beyond caring about her threats. The only thing that mattered now was getting as far away from her and this toxic mess as possible. "You've already ruined us, Jenna," I said, turning on my heel and heading for the door. "But I'm not sticking around to watch you finish the job." As I reached the door, I paused, not out of hesitation, but to make one final point. "Good luck with your new life, Jenna," I said without turning around. "I hope it's everything you dreamed it would be. Because you're going to need it." With that, I walked out of the room, leaving her standing there, seething with anger and fear. The house felt different now, colder, emptier. But instead of feeling the weight of loneliness, I felt something else: freedom. As I grabbed my jacket and keys from the table, I could hear her shouting from the bedroom, her voice echoing through the halls. "You're making the biggest mistake of your life, Mike. You'll regret this. You'll come crawling back to me, and when you do, I'll be the one laughing." I didn't respond. Her words were just noise, now empty, meaningless. I had made my decision, and there was no turning back. I opened the front door and stepped outside, the cool night air hitting my face like a refreshing wake-up call. For the first time in what felt like forever, I could breathe again. As I walked down the driveway, I heard the door slam behind me, followed by the sound of something crashing against the wall inside the house. Jenna was losing it, and part of me couldn't help but feel a sick satisfaction in knowing that she was finally facing the consequences of her actions. But I wasn't going to stick around to see how it all played out. I had my own life to rebuild, and I was going to do it without her. I got into my car and started the engine, the hum of the motor a soothing reminder that I was finally in control of my own destiny. As I pulled out of the driveway, I didn't look back. There was nothing left for me there, nothing but the ashes of a life that had been burned to the ground. As I drove through the quiet streets, the gravity of the situation began to settle in. Jenna had betrayed me in the worst possible way, and now she was paying the price. But I wasn't going to let her drag me down with her. I had a future to think about, and it didn't include her. The road stretched out before me, dark and uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt a strange sense of peace. I didn't know where I was headed, but I knew one thing for sure: I was finally free. But just as I was beginning to think I could leave this nightmare behind, my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, expecting to see a message from Jenna, another desperate attempt to pull me back into her chaos. But it wasn't her. It was a number I didn't recognize. Curiosity got the better of me, and I pulled over to the side of the road, my heart pounding as I opened the message. The words on the screen made my blood run cold. "You think you're done with this, Mike? Think again. We have the footage. And we're not done with you." For a moment, I just stared at the message, my mind racing. Who the hell was this? And what did they mean by "we"? It was clear that Jenna's mess was far from over, and now it looked like I was still caught in the middle of it. I gripped the steering wheel, a fresh wave of anger and fear crashing over me. I wasn't out of the woods yet, and it seemed like the nightmare was far from over. But one thing was certain: I wasn't going to let them win. Not Jenna, not whoever was behind this, no one. I started the car again, my mind already working on what to do next. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The night was dark and quiet, but inside me, a storm was raging. My heart pounded like a drum as I stared at the message on my phone, the words blurring as my anger boiled over. Who the hell did these people think they were? First, Jenna tears my life apart, and now this? I slammed my fist against the steering wheel, the car horn blaring briefly in the empty street. "Damn it!" I shouted, the sound echoing in the confined space. This was too much. I had already lost everything I thought I knew: my marriage, my trust in the woman I loved, the life I had built. And now, these faceless cowards were coming after me? My hands shook with rage as I gripped the phone, my knuckles white with the force. The thought of Jenna, sitting back at the house, probably too wrapped up in her own mess to care, made my blood boil. She had set this whole disaster in motion, and now I was paying the price for her greed, her deceit. It was infuriating. "Why me?" I growled, feeling the helplessness mixing with the anger, a toxic cocktail that threatened to explode. I couldn't believe how quickly my life had spiraled out of control. Just days ago, I thought I had everything figured out: a decent job, a beautiful wife, a future. Now, all of it was gone, shattered like glass. I wanted to punch something, to break something, to unleash all this fury that was eating me alive. The betrayal, the lies, the humiliation, it was all too much. And now these bastards were trying to pull me even deeper into their twisted game? No way. I wasn't going to let that happen. Not without a fight. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to calm myself, but the rage wouldn't subside. How could it, when everything was so completely screwed up? I thought about going back to the house, confronting Jenna again, maybe even demanding she fix this mess. But what good would that do? She had already made it clear she didn't give a damn about me or our marriage. She was too busy worrying about herself to care what happened to me. But the thought of her sitting there, maybe even laughing at how this was all playing out, made my blood boil even more. I couldn't just walk away from this. I couldn't let her or whoever sent that message win. I had to do something, anything, to take control of my life again. I stared at the message one more time, the words searing into my mind. Whoever they were, they thought they could scare me, push me around, just like Jenna had. But they were wrong. I wasn't going to be a victim. Not anymore. With a surge of determination, I dialed Jenna's number. She picked up after a few rings, and her voice was cold, almost bored. "What do you want, Mike, Jenna?" I spat, barely able to contain the venom in my voice. "You better start talking. Who the hell are these people? And what the hell have you dragged me into?" There was a brief silence on the other end, and then Jenna's voice came through, laced with annoyance. "What are you babbling about now?" I could feel my anger flaring up even more. "Don't play dumb with me, Jenna. I just got a message from some assholes saying they have footage and that they're not done with me. What the hell is going on?" Her response was icy and dismissive, as if my panic and anger were nothing but a nuisance to her. "Oh, that? Don't worry about it, Mike. It's nothing you need to concern yourself with." "Nothing to concern myself with?" I repeated, incredulous. "Are you out of your mind? These people are threatening me, Jenna. You dragged me into this, and now you're telling me not to worry? I'm in this mess because of you." Jenna's tone hardened. "Listen, Mike, I'm handling it, okay? You don't need to get involved. Just stay out of it." That was it. The final straw. The sheer audacity of her words sent me over the edge. "Stay out of it?" I roared into the phone. "You think you can just sweep this under the rug? Do you have any idea what you've done? You've destroyed our marriage, our lives, and now these people are coming after me because of your stupidity. And you want me to stay out of it? Screw you, Jenna. I'm not staying out of anything." For a moment, there was silence on the other end, and I could almost picture Jenna's stunned face. But then she snapped back, her voice filled with venom. "You know what, Mike? You're pathetic. You always have been. You're nothing but a coward who's too scared to face reality. You think you can just walk away and blame me for everything? Fine, go ahead. But don't you dare think you're better than me. You're just as much a part of this as I am." Her words were like a slap to the face, stinging and sharp, but they only fueled my anger. "Part of this?" I echoed, my voice shaking with fury. "The only thing I'm a part of is the wreckage you left behind. You wanted more, Jenna? Well, congratulations. You got it. But don't expect me to clean up your mess. You can go to hell for all I care. You're not as innocent as you think, Mike," she hissed, her voice dripping with malice. "You were so wrapped up in your own little world, you didn't even notice what was happening right under your nose. You're just as responsible for this as I am. And now you're going to have to deal with the consequences." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She was actually trying to pin this on me, to make it seem like I had some hand in her betrayal, her lies. It was sickening. "You're delusional," I shot back, my voice low and dangerous. "You made your choices, Jenna. Not me. You chose to betray me, to lie to me, to sell yourself out. That's all on you. And now I'm done with you. You can rot in the mess you've created." Before she could respond, I hung up, my hand trembling with rage. The sheer audacity of her, trying to twist this around, trying to make me feel guilty for her sins, it was too much. I couldn't stand it anymore. I had to get out of here, to put as much distance between myself and Jenna as possible. But even as I drove away, the anger bubbling inside me, I couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Jenna had dragged me into something dark and dangerous, and no matter how far I ran, it felt like the shadows were closing in. And then my phone buzzed again. I glanced down, my heart hammering in my chest as I saw another message from the unknown number. You think you can just walk away, Mike? We're watching. And we're waiting. See you soon. A cold chill ran down my spine as the realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just about Jenna anymore. They were after me too. And they weren't going to stop until they got what they wanted. I slammed my foot on the gas, the car roaring down the empty road. I had no idea where I was going, but one thing was clear: I couldn't run forever. Sooner or later, I was going to have to face them. And when that time came, I had to be ready. But for now, all I could do was drive, the darkness of the night swallowing me whole, as I tried to figure out how the hell I was going to survive this nightmare. The road ahead of me was a blur, dark and winding as my thoughts spiraled out of control. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white, and my heart pounded like a drum in my chest. The anger, the fear, the disbelief, it all mingled together in a toxic storm that I couldn't escape. Jenna's words kept echoing in my mind, each one stinging like a lash. She had blamed me for this mess, twisted the knife in deeper, and then those messages from that unknown number: we're watching, we're waiting, they rattled around in my brain, setting my nerves on edge. I had no idea where I was going. I was just driving, trying to outrun the chaos, trying to escape the nightmare that had become my life. But no matter how fast I went, I couldn't shake the sense of dread that clung to me like a shadow. The road ahead curved sharply, and in my frantic state, I barely noticed until it was too late. I jerked the wheel, trying to navigate the turn, but the tires screeched, and the car swerved violently. Panic surged through me as I struggled to regain control, but it was like the car had a mind of its own, slipping and sliding across the pavement. Come on, come on! I shouted, desperately trying to correct the course, but the car was spinning, the world outside the windows a dizzying blur of darkness and light. And then, in one horrifying instant, everything flipped upside down. The car veered off the road, hitting the edge of the embankment. I felt the impact like a sledgehammer to the chest, the force of it knocking the air out of my lungs. The car rolled once, twice, each time smashing into the ground with a bone-jarring crunch. Glass shattered, metal twisted, and I was thrown around like a rag doll, my head slamming against the side of the door, the dashboard, the ceiling. There was a brief, agonizing moment when I thought this was it, that I was about to die. The noise, the pain, the terror, it was all consuming. And then, just as suddenly as it began, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, the world was a blur of white. For a moment, I couldn't tell where I was, or even who I was. My head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache, and my body felt like it had been run over by a truck. I tried to move, but my limbs were heavy, unresponsive, like they didn't belong to me. As my vision slowly cleared, I realized I was in a hospital room, the sterile smell of disinfectant filling my nostrils. The beeping of machines surrounded me, a steady, rhythmic sound that seemed to pulse in time with the dull pain in my head. I tried to speak, to call out, but my throat was dry, my voice weak and raspy. It felt like I had been asleep for 1,000 years, my mind groggy, slow to piece together what had happened. And then it all came rushing back: the car, the crash, the messages, Jenna. Panic gripped me as I tried to sit up, but my body refused to cooperate. My movements were sluggish, as if I were moving through molasses. I glanced around the room, looking for something, anything, to anchor myself to reality, but everything felt distant, surreal. A nurse appeared beside me, her face kind but expressionless, like she had seen this 1,000 times before. "Mr. Thompson, please try to relax," she said softly, her voice calm and measured. "You've been through a very serious accident. How long?" I croaked, the words barely audible. She hesitated for a moment, her eyes searching mine as if weighing how much to tell me. "You've been in a coma for 16 days. 16 days." The words echoed in my mind, heavy and incomprehensible. 16 days of nothingness, of being lost in the void, while the world moved on without me. "I know this must be overwhelming," the nurse continued, her voice soothing. "But you're lucky to be alive. The accident was severe. You suffered significant injuries, but you're stable now. It's going to take time, but you'll recover. The words didn't fully register. My mind was still spinning, trying to catch up to the reality of what had happened. 16 days. What had I missed? What had happened while I was lying here, unconscious, helpless? As the nurse checked my vitals, I tried to process it all: the crash, the hospital, the coma. My thoughts were sluggish, tangled, but one thing kept pushing to the forefront of my mind: Jenna. What had happened with Jenna? Had she even known I was here? Did she care? The nurse finished her tasks and gave me a reassuring smile. You should rest, Mr. Thompson. You've been through a lot, and your body needs time to heal. I wanted to ask more, to demand answers, but the exhaustion was too much. My eyelids felt like they were weighted down, and before I could stop it, the darkness crept in again, pulling me under. The days that followed were a blur of doctors, nurses, and endless tests. Each day, I felt a little stronger, a little more present, but the emotional scars ran deeper than the physical ones. My mind kept returning to those last moments before the crash: the rage, the fear, the messages. And Jenna. Always Jenna. I kept expecting her to walk through the door, to see her standing there, but she never came. Each day passed in a haze of loneliness and frustration, as I lay there, powerless, waiting for anything to happen. It wasn't until nearly a week after I woke up that I finally received a visitor. But it wasn't Jenna. It was a detective. He introduced himself, his voice grave as he pulled up a chair beside my bed. Mr. Thompson, he began, his tone serious. I'm sorry to meet you under these circumstances, but there are some things we need to discuss. My heart skipped a beat, a sick feeling settling in my stomach. What's this about? I asked, my voice stronger now, but laced with anxiety. The detective hesitated, as if choosing his words carefully. We've been investigating a series of incidents connected to your wife, Jenna Thompson. There's been some disturbing developments since your accident. I felt the blood drain from my face. Developments? What do you mean? He handed me a small envelope, the same kind I had received that fateful night. We found this in your wife's possession after she was taken into custody. My hands trembled as I took the envelope, dreading what I might find inside. Slowly, I opened it, my breath catching in my throat as I pulled out a single sheet of paper. Your wife wasn't just making videos. She was working for us. And now you owe us. We'll be in touch. The words were like a punch to the gut. I looked up at the detective, my mind reeling. What is this? He sighed, his expression grim. It seems Jenna was involved in something far more serious than just making videos. There's a criminal organization behind it, and they've been using her and now you as leverage. We've been trying to track them down, but they're slippery. We're doing everything we can to protect you, but you need to be prepared. This isn't over. I stared at the paper, my heart pounding in my chest. Everything Jenna had done, every lie she had told, it had all been part of something much bigger, something darker. And now, it was coming for me. The weight of it all crashed down on me like a tidal wave, and for the first time since I woke up, I felt truly terrified. This wasn't just about Jenna anymore. This was about survival. And I wasn't sure I had the strength to face what was coming. But one thing was certain, there was no going back. The nightmare wasn't over. It was just beginning.